Hi guys, and welcome to a new video. In today's video we're gonna have a look at an endgame rook versus pawns, and we will learn two things. First, you will develop an intuition of which pawn to push first, and second, you will understand how to evaluate such endgames quickly. That means you will be able to say who is pushing for the win. Is it white or is it black who needs to be careful? So that's it. Black to move. It's your turn, and we will straight continue with the solution. Okay, first let's figure out who is trying to win here. Is it black with the two pawns trying to win the rook for the first pawn and then queen the other pawn, or is it white with the rook? And as in the most cases, it is the rook who is stronger than the two pawns. There are just some exceptions where the pawns are very far advanced, but in general, even if the king and one pawn is very far advanced, white is not in the danger zone. Let me demonstrate this to you. If h5, white can basically say, I don't want to move, and black is pushing further, and even the position after g5 and g4, even if white has not moved till now, it's still a draw. So when you play around like this, you will get an intuition who's really, the one who needs to be careful. White really didn't have to do anything, and black still cannot win. So this is, a good way also to learn when there is the critical point, when you really are close to losing, and when you see something like this in the starting position, and you have seen examples where the pawns are much further advanced, and you still know it's still close. Then if the pawns would be further advanced, then you can really be sure I will never lose this as white, because the pawns are not advanced at all. The white king is also very close, and let's just imagine the white king fighting the pawns. He's almost in time, and that's my second rule of thumb. If the king could almost, that means by 1 or 2 tempi, catch the pawns himself, then the side with the king and rook is never really losing, because usually the pawn cannot go into the straight race with the king, because then the rook will stop the pawn and win it finally. So black really needs to spend twice as many tempo as a rule of thumb. So in general, white is pushing here and black is in danger, and black really must be careful which pawn to push, and one of those moves is losing and the other one draws. There is not so much margin for error here. Let's have a look at the solution first, which is h5. So we're trying to run with the h pawn, and why this is a good idea I will explain to you in a moment. However, first I want to point out that also king f4 makes a draw, but after king e6 we again need to decide which pawn, and it's again the h pawn out of similar reasons, and again you need to play h4, which transposes to our main line. So we will just cover this via the h5 move order. So after h5, white is trying to bring the king closer, but the black king is doing a good job for the moment, body checking the white king, so it cannot approach that quickly. So white can start with king d6, black is pushing the pawn, king d5. Now white is kind of threatening to come closer with the king by first threatening the black king, needs to go to the g file, and then the white king is approaching. However, since black is setting all his hopes onto the h pawn, this approaching the e file, it's not enough, because there is still a body check from the king on g4, not allowing the white king to come even closer. And that's basically the thing we want to learn in this video. So the intuition should tell you, once you have the h pawn, you can body check from the f file, and then you can once again body check from the g file. So white needs to attack your king twice, and that needs a lot of time. So white is not in time to push the king to the rim of the board, and so black makes the draw because the king will just now go to the g file, but still it's body checking, and the white king is not in time to approach as he would like. Meanwhile, if in this situation here the pawn would be on the g file, then after king g4, king e3, the white king is already very close to the g pawn. So the advantage of the h pawn is just that it's very distant to the white king, and that the black king doesn't need to step on the same file as the pawn is, and it won't hinder the own pawn to queen, and the white king will not get as close. So this is an easy draw. King e3, h2, now rook h8, king g2. No chance for white to win here. Let's have a look at the losing line also to understand why some things don't work out there. So g5 is the wrong try, and we will again see white king trying to march, and the king is very fast. It's almost in the square, so it's almost catching the pawn himself. So yeah, you should feel it that white is really close to winning here, and white is indeed winning. King f4, king d4. Very logical. We always need to fight for the opposition so that we can check the king, force him to the g file, and then approach the king, breaking the body check and the opposition. So black is trying to run away, and we should still go there, because in case of rook f8 check, the black king will be able to body check us, and now the white king cannot approach really. Or sometimes black could even switch his plan and go here and hope for the h pawn, but I think king e2 is the move here. And white cannot even go back and repeat the moves and correct his error, because now the king would go to f2, and this would not be in time. Again, after rook f8, there is the body check. This should really come natural to you. Body checking, it's so important that you don't let the white king come closer. Let's continue this a bit. King e3, g2, rook g8, king f1, check. And again, you should have the intuition, body check, not allowing the white king to e2. And it's a draw. No chance, white needs to stop the pawn again. Also note that playing for checkmate would even backfire, as g1 queens with a check. So let's go back. White should not start with the check on f8. This throws away the win, but instead go king d3. And now after h5, we push the king away, and we see the key difference. Now, since the g pawn is the pawn which is running, the king is already now, after the first check, in front of the pawn, and there will be no second chance for body checking as it would have been with the h pawn. So now white approaches the king, h4, check. This is very important, and depending where the king goes, white either wins a pawn and the game. There is no real hope for stalemate, as white can play rook here, and it would only be stalemate if we take, but we can of course checkmate, or we could also play a waiting move and then take the pawn with check. Or if the king goes up to g3, then the white king finally comes in. And when the white king is in front of the pawns, there is never a chance to hold the draw, I think, because the pawns won't make it forward, and white will easily win the pawns slowly by means of Zugzwang. Okay, so are there other tries once black played this g5 mistake? Yes, there are. For example, black could still try to include the h pawn one move later, but in general it's a better idea to really go all in with one pawn instead of moving both pawns simultaneously, especially once the king is really close and trying to get in front of the pawns. You can run with the pawns if the king is very distant, then it's sometimes a good idea because you keep winning chances. But if the king is very close, and here the king is very close with king d5, by pure time the king would catch all the pawns, then it's not a good idea to play with both pawns. However, this try is a bit tricky and we will have a look at it. So black pushes h4, king is trying to run, and king is trying to run. The king is just trying to come around, and black is again trying to body check the white king and to block him away. So now we need to be careful, as rook f8, which feels very logical, gives away the win. So after king g2, black is again drawing with the h pawn because white is not in time to body check the black king, to break the body check from the black king for a second time. For example, this one and this one, and no, not this one. We can play g4, and we must play g4, I guess. And the rook has no check, and with this shield on the g file, there will be no chance to stop this pawn from queening. Of course, it's still a draw. You could go here, for example, and once something like that happens, you will always be able to take on h1 and then take g3. If black is waiting, we're also waiting, and it's a draw. So no rook f8, and the idea which is following now is quite difficult if you haven't seen it before, as there are so many options. If you want to challenge yourself, you can pause the video for a moment and try to figure it out, but we will straight continue with the solution. Rook e3 check, disturbing the harmony of the king. The king would be perfect here, blocking the white king, and also securing the way for the own pawns. And now the king needs to make a concession. If the king goes here, we ask him again what to do. Also g2, it's the same. g2 is supporting the h-pawn more, but again we check him, and then he needs to make a concession. If he goes there, the white king will approach it this way and trying to play for checkmate. King e3, g4, waiting move. White is threatening king f4 now, so black should push. White is doing a waiting move, and rook b4, winning the pawns. Let's push this line a bit further. Here there is a check, king g1, king here, and now we can stop the pawn by checking and waiting. King needs to go to the h-file. We check again, and we come from this side, avoiding all kind of stalemates, and it's a win. So let's have a look at the second alternative. If after this check on the second rank, the king is going to f3, then we come around this way, and finally our king is really in time, getting in front of the pawns and securing the win. So that's it for this example. I think we discussed all the lines. Of course, there are always more tries, but I think that's the most important stuff. What you should really remember is the principle. Why is it more logical to start with the h-pawn? Because you first body check on the f-file, and then when your king is pushed to the g-file, the king is still on the correct square, not in front of the pawn, not letting the white king approach too much, and that's why black is drawing there. Meanwhile, if you take the g-pawn, then after your king is being pushed to the g-file, it's already trouble because the white king is approaching to the e-file and already very close enough to the pawn. So that's it for the video. If you have any questions, write them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.